Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I am Tracy Cram Perkins and our show today is Dementia Home Care. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, USA Global TV and Radio. I am a 4-time dementia caregiving survivor and the author of Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. And joining me today is our special guest, gerontologist Laura Wayman, internationally renowned as the Dementia Whisperer and the author of the book, A Loving Approach to Dementia Care. It is her mission to transform dementia caregiving. Welcome, Laura.
Well, thank you, Tracy. I am so honored to be here with you today. It's so good to see your smiling face and to really sit next to you and help caregivers all over who need advice and support and encouragement and love.
Oh, thank you so much. So I want to give a shout out for your book right now because this is a very fabulous book. If you have not read this book, I would say check it out. As you can see, I have tabbed all over it. I love this book. So Laura, thank you. And I have an autographed copy.
Well, thank you. And I am so honored to also be able to have your book here in my library. It is just, I always like to say that you and I together, that you fill the holes in my head with the rocks in yours and vice versa, because there's so much to learn about dementia, and together we can give so much more support from different perspectives. And that's exactly what the world needs. Don't you agree?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I love your caring approach to this. When I first met you, I was in such awe, as you remember. But I mean, it was the way you approach things when I actually saw you live and in person on stage, showing people what it looked and felt like to have dementia was so incredible. And I'm just wondering if you can explain for the audience about what dementia is. That would be really helpful.
Of course, because I really sat and thought about this. I've been an executive director for assisted living and memory care. I've owned my own in-home care company. And what I was seeing, Tracy, is that our perception and approach with those that have dementia symptoms was really failing. And I really watched this, looked at it and said, what is going on? Why is the way we communicate and engage with a healthy brain, what we've learned all our life, why is that not working when we're working with someone who has brain function loss exhibited in dementia symptoms? So I thought, I need to really study this. What is dementia? Because it's not what we've learned. And what we've learned is that dementia is memory loss. And so let me explain what I mean by dementia is not memory loss, because we've also learned that dementia is an illness or a disease, and that's not really what it is either. So what is it? Dementia is a list of symptoms. And what do symptoms tell us? Symptoms tell us that something wrong, something is not working properly in our body. So for example, if you have the symptom of pain, you know, your body is saying, hey, you have an injury or something is not right. And your body is exhibiting that in that symptom of pain. So then our job is to figure out what is the cause of that symptom? What is causing us to experience pain? So I looked at this from that angle. What is dementia? Dementia is actually loss of learned brain function. And in order for us to have a symptom, there has to be a cause. And surprise, there's over 100 different causes of loss of brain function that we're exhibiting in these dementia symptoms. So what's happening is if an individual over time is beginning to exhibit all these different dementia symptoms, way above and beyond the symptom that we thought was memory loss, then what is happening is they have a cause. And the many causes could be a brain illness, a brain disease, a brain injury. And it's those things are causing this brain function loss. And what I mean by brain function loss, it's the loss of our ability to think and process and understand the world around us. For example, the leading cause of dementia symptoms is a disease called Alzheimer's disease. Over 60% of the time, if someone is exhibiting over time these dementia symptoms, then it is caused by Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's disease, what happens is that disease gets in that person's brain. We're not real sure how it gets there, but it gets there and it is there permanently. We have no way to get it out. So what's happening is that disease is robbing us of actual brain function. It is robbing us of the clinical. If we think about this clinically, it's robbing us of brain cells, brain matter that store information we've learned over a lifetime. So what we begin to see is we go to access that brain function that we've learned over our lifetime, and it's gone. So we exhibit that in dementia symptoms such as confusion, loss of ability to process as we did before. And, I just watched some unveiling, some new reports about early dementia symptoms, such as individuals who in the past always managed their finances really well. They could manage their checking accounts or manage their investments. And then over time, they begin to lose the ability to process and think about that. So they begin to struggle managing, thinking about, processing, and organizing their finances because that learned brain function has been robbed from them. That's an early dementia symptom that often goes unrecognized. We also can lose learned brain function of balance and coordination that we learned as we were toddlers. We can actually lose that. And then we go to access that and we're off balance. We fall. So falling, being off balance, a change in our gait can be an early dementia symptom that often, once again, goes unrecognized because families are looking for that memory loss. So there's hundreds of different dementia symptoms that go unrecognized because often individuals looking at their loved one don't know that it's actual loss in so many different areas of the brain. So dementia is a list of symptoms that tells us there is a cause of loss of brain function going on that can be permanent, progressive, and extremely debilitating. Does that help?
Yes, very much so. And I also realized that you travel the world like crazy.
Yes.
And you talk to people and you demonstrate this and I love to see the aha moments. When I was with you at a conference in September and all these people were you could just see their faces light up as they were having that aha moment as you were demonstrating something. And can you talk about how to redirect someone when they are confused or having issues uh, functioning in their surroundings? Because that was really impressive.
Absolutely. So loss of ability to process is really what I like to call, in kind of sum it up, is a person with dementia symptoms has a broken thinker. So anytime they are thinking, and our brain has to constantly be thinking, trying to understand, trying to make sense of all this information that's coming at us. Our brain has to think about what it is we're seeing and how do we process what we're seeing and what it means to us and what we're hearing. And so when someone has this loss of brain function, they have a broken thinker, the world begins to be so confusing. So the way that our body compensates or accommodates that kind of loss is the way it makes us feel. So this loss of ability to process makes us anxious, makes us frightened, makes us want to isolate, makes us overwhelmed, overstimulated. So when we see an individual who's struggling with this, they're getting hit with all this information, they can't process, they're confused, they begin to show that in agitation and anxiety. What we need to do is help them to think. The best way to help them is to be proactive and think for them. And that's what I teach in Being Dementia Aware. Keep them from escalating. But if they get to that point where they are escalating, what we need to do is really, once again, step in and talk to their feelings. Allow them to feel, because now they're running on raw feelings because their brain can no longer logically think this through. So it's all about how the world's making them feel. So when they get to a point of anxiety, we have to allow them to feel that by joining their feelings. And so if they're at that point, what we need to do is step into their world. I get scared sometimes too. No logic, no trying to talk them off the ledge. Get on the ledge with them and guide them. So, I see that you are very anxious. Come with me. I get anxious too. Let's go for a walk. It's beautiful outside. So we join their feelings, and then when we join their feelings, we can help redirect their thoughts and feelings and get them to more of a point of serenity. But what we have to understand is we can't stop it, fix it, or change it, but we can join them, help them manage it, and then feel with them.
Okay, and that leads me to my next one. Think for them. Would you explain how to think for them? Because I love this method. I've started using this everywhere, and I just can't wait to share this with everybody.
Well, absolutely. So, Tracy, let me ask you a question. How are you feeling today? And so what does your brain do when I ask you a question? What does it have to do? It has to think, right? You had to think of the question, and then your healthy brain said, well, I understand that question. I feel really good. So there's this processing that goes on that is very automatic in your healthy brain. So what helps us to understand when someone has a broken thinker, no matter what the cause, is that they're now beginning to not understand what you're saying. So, Tracy, if I asked you like this, blah, 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 how would you answer that? Now, you understand by my inflection that I'm asking you a question, and by the look on my face that I'm expecting you to answer. But how did that make you feel, Tracy?
Well, not very good. I had no idea what you were saying.
Exactly. What confused you? And then you want to answer me, right? You want to. You see that I'm not purposely making you feel that way, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm expecting you to answer. So what we need to understand is that the more we think for them in advance, we're proactive and not ask the question. So instead of asking, how are you feeling today? How would it make you feel if I said, Tracy, you look like you are feeling wonderful. it is so good to see your smiling face. Is that okay if I say that instead? Yeah, so how does that make you feel?
Oh, just lovely and warm, tingly inside.
Well, that was my intention by thinking for you. So it's okay to do that even when someone has a healthy brain. But it's not only just okay when someone is suffering from this loss of ability to think and process and respond in a normal way. When someone has this going on, it's not only just okay to think for them, it's essential. So the more we practice this, and I've seen this absolutely be magical in a bigger setting. So it works with individuals for that person, that individual who is caring for a loved one at home, but it also works just kind of globally in assisted living and in memory care. And I don't like to call it memory care. I call it dementia care because it's so much more than memory loss. For example, now that person who has loss of brain function, they have no place in their brain to store new information. So that's why it looks like memory loss, but really what it is they no longer have the ability to maintain and store and then access later information that's going on in the moment, current information. For example, if I had some brain function loss going on, and Tracy, you were to ask me today, would you like chicken or fish? Which we're not going to ask questions anymore because that makes them have to think of the answer. You know, if I ask you, would you like chicken or fish? My brain can no longer hold chicken. It's only in the moment. So I say chicken and that's gone. And then I put something else in fish. Then I would probably, because I have a broken thinker, I would probably choose fish. That's what's in the moment. That's the only thing I can process because I can't store it. Chicken's gone. Fish is here now. Now, if you were to go fix me fish and bring it back, probably what I'd say to you is, I didn't order that. I didn't want that, because once you walk away, there's no place for me to store it. So it's actually not memory loss. It's the inability to store the memories. That's why they can often access memories from their past, because they stored those memories long ago when they had a healthy brain and there was a place to store it. So that's why often someone with dementia symptoms and this brain function loss, they access the memories and the feelings from the past. They're there, but they can't. It looks like they're losing the memories, current memories, but it's not loss. It's the inability to store it. It's the inability to process it. So that's why I don't like to call it memory loss. It's not really memory loss. It's the inability to process other than in the moment. So we have to be with them in the moment. We have to think for them in the moment, right?
Oh, I love that explanation. I just love that. Like I said, I have myself have started using that and I found it works wonders. It's just an amazing technique. So, what advice would you give someone who is just starting out, has no experience with dementia caregiving, so that they can prevent making their loved one melt down?
So understand that what is left when they're losing all of this, the facts and figures and logic and that thinking ability, that processing ability, what always remains is the feelings and emotions. So what we need to learn is to become a feeling detective, and then we join them in their feelings. We talk to their feelings. So, for example, if they're saying, I want to go home, I want to go home, and they're exhibiting this need to go somewhere else, even though they really are home. Maybe they're at home with you. Maybe you've made a lovely, caring home environment for them, but they keep saying, I want to go home, I want to go home. What you need to understand is it's not the place they want to go to. It's the feelings that home represents. And often they're pulling from their past feelings of a home in the past, what that means to them, love, security. And now, because of this loss of brain function, they're not feeling that. Even though you are giving that to them the best you can, their brain is not functioning as a healthy brain would. And so they feel this insecurity, this lack of safety, this confusion because their brain's not able to process the environment. So they keep thinking they have to get somewhere to feel that. So what we need to do is give them those feelings. So I want to go home. You don't say, no, you're home. Right now you say, oh, I know home is a great place. I love home. You make me feel so safe when I'm with you. In that moment, I gave that person that feeling of safety or security or love that they were wanting. Now, I gave it to them in the moment because can they store that and access it later when they're starting to feel these insecure feelings again? No, because they can't store that and go access it later like we can with a healthy brain. So what do we need to do? We need to give it to them again and again and again. We just continue to be proactive and think for them and bring them back to that feeling in the moment.
Oh, I love that. I just love that. I personally failed at that many times until I started figuring out with my own father what he was looking for. But it was
Yes.
not intuitive, and it was a very interesting experience. And which leads me to another question: dehydration.
Ah, that
Yeah,
can that
yeah.
can be a temporary loss of brain function in itself, which will exacerbate the dementia symptoms. And there are several of these kind of temporary brain function. I call them obstacles because if that person is dehydrated, they go to access that brain function, and temporarily they're blocked because the brain inflammation is causing them to not be able to act. But that brain function that they're trying to access might still be there. It might not be permanently gone from one of these other causes. And so we hydrate their brain, and suddenly that obstacle is gone, and they can access that brain function. And it could be an infection. A urinary tract infection can cause this same temporary blockage. Some medications can cause that. So we see this. We actually call that in the industry delirium. Delirium is like temporary dementia symptoms, and it can have many different causes. So I like to say that you just kind of watch for that. We can try hydration. We can try checking for a urinary tract infection if suddenly you see more dementia symptoms on the horizon that weren't there yesterday, for example. Generally speaking, dementia symptoms come on kind of slowly, and sometimes you'll see this happen with delirium. So you can try those, but sometimes there is that permanent loss that happens. So we just every day's a new day, and we keep doing our best as that caregiver, either professional or a family caregiver. We do our best to meet their needs, but it's often quite the puzzle that we're trying to figure out, where does this piece go or where does that piece go. And we just keep making sure we're taking care of ourselves as caregivers too.
Thank you. That I know that I have experienced with family members the delirium that comes on with dehydration, thinking that they are drinking their fluids and realizing that they are not. And so just trying to figure out what to watch for was very difficult for me until somebody pointed out, because I was not that but good of a detective at the beginning. It just was, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And sometimes people with more knowledge can point it out and say, and this is what you should try. And voila, it works. And oh my gosh, I wish I would have known that like 2 years ago, but or actually for me, many years ago. Uh, so, what other types of advice do you give family members? Or actually, no, let's back up. You go out and you talk to first responders. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do with first responders?
Well, one of the biggest things that we've taught our first responders, our community members, our children, our family, is that the first thing you do in a crisis is you ask questions. In the medical industry, what happens when you go to the doctor? The doctor's going to ask you questions. Well, what does that cause your brain to need to do? To process the question and then answer it. And so with a healthy brain, that stimulates our brain to think, which is exactly what we need to do. It's good for a healthy brain. So when I am working with first responders, because I watch them really struggle, I did ride-alongs with the fire department, with the police department. And when they would get a call that was caregiver invoked, more or less, a caregiver, a family caregiver might call from their home and say, oh, my loved one has Alzheimer's, they've fallen, I need help to get them up. My loved one is wanting to go out the door, they have Alzheimer's, they're exit seeking. I would go and watch how the firemen had been taught, or the fire department, firemen and women, had been taught to engage. And so often they would ask the caregiver many questions, but they would also attempt to ask that person with dementia symptoms, suffering from a fall, from anxiety, whatever it was that was happening, and it would make it worse. Often they would make the mistake of asking, do you want to go to the hospital? Of course, that is just a emotional trigger for someone. No, I'm okay. I don't want to go to the hospital, because that brings about fear and anxiety. So what I did is I worked with these fire departments, these individuals, the police department. I worked with them to say, okay, you come upon the scene and someone's fallen and they're laying on the ground. Sit down, have compassion, join them where they are. Don't ask them a question, did you fall? I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? But say, wow, it looks like you're having a really bad day. I'm so glad that you asked me to come and help you. Let's talk about this. I feel like I can help you with this. And immediately that person will not be as defensive, will be less resistant. Perhaps the police department comes upon someone who's wandering around outside. It's cold. They don't have a jacket. They look lost. We don't want to walk up and ask them questions, because they're going to become fearful and defensive. Instead, we walk up and say, I think I've seen you around here before. Help me. Let's figure out where you need to be. And you know what? It's cold outside. Come sit in the car with me. It's nice and warm, and I want to get to know you better. Instead, they're more likely with that positive action. Come with me. I'm here to help. I'm so glad we're together. Those kinds of things will help to eliminate that defensiveness, that anxiety. And so those are the kinds of loving approach, that dementia awareness that I teach.
I thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that, because we had an experience where my father had wandered from a skilled care facility, and we were very fortunate that the sheriff that picked him up actually had a family member who had dementia, and so he invited him to come back with him for a ride, as opposed to scolding him or trying to coerce him or any other method. And my dad came back so thrilled because the sheriff explained all the equipment in the car to my dad, and by the time he came back, he was so happy. He explained to us step by step how he was able to escape.
And isn't that amazing? Because our job as a dementia aware individual, no matter where you are, is to help that person feel moments of love, safety, security, and value. That's exactly what that sheriff did. That's exactly what I was walking off the airplane the other day. Here's a flight attendant really struggling because she's bending over an older gentleman in the front row saying, is someone meeting you at the gate? Because she obviously could see that he had confusion, that she needed to question him to make sure that he was being cared for properly. And it was just making him so anxious. He was just pretty soon he said, round and round and round you go. And the flight attendant was going, oh my gosh, because she kept asking him to think. So I plopped down in the seat next to him and I did this. Tracy, I said, it's so good to see you. And he looked at me. And it's so interesting to me when people are having a hard time processing how that feels so good to them. It's so good to see you. He reached out and took my hands and he just kind of shook his head like, it's good to see you too. He didn't necessarily know me, but it felt good. So whatever. And I said to him, I bet someone who loves you very much is meeting you at the gate. And he shook his head like, that sounds good. Yeah. And so just then the gate attendant came down and said, his daughter's waiting for him. And I said, see, your daughter, come with me. Your daughter's waiting for you. She loves you so much. And he just got out of his seat and came with me down the gangway. And you know what? I didn't know him, Tracy. He didn't know me. But what did I make him feel? And in that moment, and there his daughter was, and the flight attendant was just going. So flight attendants need to know not to ask the question too, right? Mm-hmm. Just for that reason. I mean, it seems so simplistic, but questions just cause anxiety. So give them the answer that feels good rather than asking the question.
And that goes back to your dementia aware, because most of us are not dementia aware. And what you do makes it so, I don't want to say simplistic, but it makes it easier to understand.
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit more about your dementia aware program?
Yes, absolutely. And now I'm kind of expanding this to emotional awareness too, because it's kind of across the board. But what I do is I help people with dementia awareness. I help people to understand what dementia really is and why we need to change the way we have a care approach. It would not make sense to you or your audience if I just said, okay, don't ask questions. That's being dementia aware. No, we need to understand why questions are such a problem, because they have that broken thinker. So we don't want them to have to think anymore because it simply doesn't work for them. So it's just kinder for us to step in and think for them on so many different levels. We don't want to give them a long list of instructions. We want to help them to think through these things with this broken thinker, with this gap in their ability to think things through. Not, would you like to brush your teeth? Or we want to say, here's your toothbrush and I'm going to brush my teeth with you. Just, let's do it together so that they feel successful, so that they feel safe. We need to be their emotional safe place to land. And in order to do that, we simply need to be dementia aware, to fill in those gaps that they are experiencing, that loss, to be 2 steps ahead of them, because that's what's going to help them not escalate into raw emotions that are difficult for them to understand.
Thank you so much for that, because I realize that coming from a place of caring for 4 family members and knowing nothing, I had no tools in my toolbox and did everything wrong. And the more I have learned, obviously, the better I have become at it. However, there was no dementia awareness when I was first starting out, and there wasn't a whole lot of information out there that was accessible. So I just appreciate the fact that you actually have that available to people, and that you are so willing to help people. I mean, it's just Laura, it's just wonderful. We have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we go?
Well, one of the things that I so admire about you, Tracy, is that your book, your programming really is that step by step. I'm kind of the abstract, let's think about feelings and emotions and join them there. And then you come in with these great, relatable steps that you've learned about how to really set that home up in an environment. So doing all that pre-thinking for them, in the environment, in so many pieces that I feel like I miss in my program. So I'm kind of that 1,000-foot, and you're down right on the ground helping with so much more of that relatable, task-oriented kinds of things that I appreciate that together we really give more information, and how I was so honored to present with you, and how we can help people. There's so many facets to this I hate to call dementia diamond, but just kind of that, all the different facets, the different perceptions we need to have, the different knowledge we need to have. And thank you for allowing me to come next to you and give even more information to all these folks that need it. Yes, our medical community needs to become dementia aware, and they need your information as well. So thank you, Tracy.
Well, thank you, Laura. Okay, for those of you that didn't know this, we shared a stage at an Alzheimer's event, and we were doing 10 steps to calming aggressive dementia behavior. And Laura and I role played on stage and demonstrated to people how to de-escalate, how to be reaching someone's emotions. It was a beautiful experience, and then the audience participated and asked us questions. It was a very, very lovely event, and I am very honored that I think of Laura as my my sensei, I'm her Padawan learner. I don't know how I want to look at it,
Well, that feels really good, Tracy. Thank you.
but so it was just a beautiful experience, and the audience was so attentive and they were so engaged. It was just really lovely to be able to actually just demonstrate that, and we got some really great questions, especially when people are asking about when violence occurs because somebody's throwing a punch, how to de-escalate that, and again, it's trying to prevent it rather than you
Right.
know get to that point. But sometimes it happens because of a delusion, because of some sort of medical issue. So it just depends on the situation. But we had a woman in the audience that asked us because her, I believe, was it her father or husband? I can't remember. A gentleman she was caring for in her family was punching her. And so we talked about that. And then another thing that Laura addressed was feeding in skilled care facilities. And we have about a minute and a half left here. Did you want to talk a little bit? Do you remember that question about the feeding in the skilled care facility?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
often what skill tries to do is have this institutional feel in a cafeteria like environment. And I was helping in skilled nursing, and the dining room was so loud, and trays clanking and silverware, and people asking and crying out. And we had a lady who just was refusing to eat, and she kept going like this. And so I was watching, and she was just going like this, and she had so much anxiety. And they were asking, what do you want, or how can I help you? And it was just making her worse, making her worse. So I asked the staff to bring her out in the hallway where it was quiet. We brought her a tray, and what we did is we gave her one thing at a time in a quiet environment, rather than this tray full of things, because you have to think. You have to decide, what am I going to eat first? And what is this? And what silverware do I use? So we started by just bringing her a cup of coffee, and said, here's your coffee. It feels so good to have a nice warm cup of coffee. And then she took a few sips of that. And then we brought her one thing on her plate, a piece of toast. And it was already buttered, ready for her. And she just picked it up, and she watched that. And instead of saying, are you hungry, or do you want this, is, here you go. I bet you're hungry. Here's some toast that we made just for you. And slowly we saw that she began to relax and eat. So once again, it's just watching their reaction. They're going to tell you with their behavior what they're feeling. Join those feelings, allow them to feel, and then what happens is they begin to exist in their dementia wonderland because we're helping them to feel successful, to feel successful, whether it's eating or bathing or just all these different tasks of daily living.
Laura, thank you so much.
You are
And
so welcome. Thank you, Tracy. I'm so honored to be with you today.
And it's now time for us to wrap up. So I know I will talk to you again soon. So, but
Okay.
to our audience, we will be back on the 21st of January, and our guest will be former Wisconsin Governor Martin Schreiber, an Alzheimer and dementia advocate and author of the book My Chewy Lanes. In the meantime, you may go to our YouTube channel at USA Global TV and Radio and look for the Dementia Home Care playlist, where you will find all of our past episodes. Thank you to the wonderful Dr. Jacqueline for all of your hard work behind the scenes today. And thank you to our sponsors for making this possible. See you next time, everyone. Hi there. I am Tracy Cram Perkins, the host of the Dementia Home Care Show here on USA Global TV and Radio. I am also the author of the book of the same name. And you'll see this QR code. This is for an extended version of the same talk. So if you want to see the full hour-long version, feel free to scan the code and go to that website. But in the meantime, stick with me. We'll talk about 5 little-known secrets to make it a little easier to do dementia caregiving. First of all, let me give you a little background. I am a 4-time dementia caregiving survivor, and my Alzheimer's story didn't start until my father was found unconscious in his apartment. And he came to in the hospital and was diagnosed with moderate Alzheimer's disease. Now, one of the things that we didn't plan for is that my sisters and I had decided to divvy up care. She was caring for my dad. I was caring for our mom. We were still sharing the care, but each of us had split the power of attorney. And so we didn't have the power of attorney to take care of the existing parent at the time that we needed to. So here's what happened. The hospital, assuming that we would return him to his apartment and not take him to our home, refused to release him to our care because they thought he would end up back in the hospital 3 days later, which is typical. So unfortunately, because I didn't have power of attorney and I didn't have HIPAA access at the moment, I had no say in what happened to him, and he ended up going into a group home. Well, this started a 5-month-long journey where we were trying to rescue my father from the system. And he went from bad to worse to yet worse. And he kept escaping because he didn't believe there was anything wrong with him. All he wanted to do was go for a walk. And he didn't understand why this was happening. And so he would escape. And of course, he would escape up to 5 times, and then they would send him to the next more secure facility. He also ended up in 2 geriatric psych wards for behavior issues that were related to drug interactions, because every time he would exhibit a behavior, the doctor at the facility would give him one more medication to control it without removing any of the prior medications. So we had multiple problems going on. So with that in mind, let's talk about some of the things that's happening to the brain. So let's take a look at this. Okay, what you're seeing on the left-hand side is a healthy aged brain, age 55 and above. The one you're seeing on the right is an Alzheimer's disease brain. It is in moderate disease. It is shrinking. It has holes in it. The memories that were in those holes no longer exist. So let's look at how the brain works. When you're learning something, let's say in kindergarten, you learn how to tie your shoelace. Well, then by the time you're in 2nd grade, your brain remembers that information from tying the shoelace and applies it so you can learn more quickly how to tie more complex knots. So the brain is hardwired to do this for us. So it helps us learn faster so it doesn't take as long to acquire knowledge. So if somebody has a hole in the brain and you've asked them a question and they come back with a very strange answer, it's because the brain is looking for the information and they pick the closest to wherever that hole is. So that is why you're not getting the correct answer, whether they're giving you something that never happened, as far as you know, or you're saying you're getting frustrated with them. So understand that you can not bring them back to where you are. You have to meet them where they are in their timeline and give them a place of safety, a way to anchor them to bring them safely through whatever's going on around them. So let's look at some tips that we can use to help do that. Okay,
The first thing I want to talk about is the whiteboard. Now, I stole the whiteboard idea from the hospital because I just thought this was a fantastic idea. With the whiteboard, you can write down the day, the date, and also all the activities they have, whether it's doctor's appointments, exercise classes, anything that they're going to be doing that day, you put on the whiteboard. Then, and this is the best part, if they ask you a question over and over again, this is how you can handle it with the whiteboard. The first time they ask you the question, answer the question, smile, and laugh. Then you're both laughing, and it's like, oh, okay, that's the answer. Then when they repeat it 5 minutes later, you go, oh, that's so funny. Okay, yes, it's blah, 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 blah. Okay, the next time they ask you, you write it on the board. Okay, after you've written it on the board, then when they ask you again, you point it to them and say, I'm sorry, I'm busy doing such and such. Can you please read it off the board for me? Now you've empowered them with a tool where they can get their own answer because that's the problem. They're lost. They can't find their own answer. You have just supplied them with a tool to do that. This doesn't work 100% of the time, but it does work quite a bit of the time. All right. The next tool we want to talk about is the calendar clock. The calendar clock was my aunt's favorite tool because whenever she'd wake up from a nap, she thought it was Saturday. And you can see by the clock on the calendar here that it's Tuesday. So it would help her orient. Now, the other thing that you can do with it is it comes with an app so that you can program in special events, birthdays, appointments, anything that you want your loved one to remember. And then you can use it in conjunction with however they used during their lifetime, or when they were earlier in their lifetime. Perhaps they used a desk calendar so they can go back and forth and compare so that they know for sure that that's where they need to be and orient on the day and the date. So this is a great tool for your loved one because then wherever they see it, they can find it and get their own answer. Now, one of the things you may not be aware of is that people with dementia lose their nouns first, specifically with Alzheimer's disease. So one of the questions my mom once asked me was, the dog drank go juice? Now, I didn't know if she was asking me for more coffee or if she thought the dog needed to go out for a personal moment. I didn't know. So I had to figure that out. Now I know because there's tools available that you can use that didn't exist when I was caring for my mom. The caregiver cards are a wonderful example where you can actually show them either the pictograms or the short sentences that are listed on there to help your loved one identify what the problem is. So you can say, can you point to whatever that is? So whatever the go juice is, can you tell me more about the go juice? And show them the pictures until you find the right one. It doesn't take long to get familiar with this and learn how to use it with your loved one. And once you do, it now becomes a respite tool because every other family member that comes over, any friends, anybody that's going to give you respite, teach them how to use it. And then they will have a good experience as well. And they won't have the stress of having to figure out what's going on or why their loved one's melting down because they don't understand how to fix it. And then you also will get more respite because everyone's happy. The next tool I'd like to share with you has to do with a pill minder. Now, for people that are in moderate Alzheimer's disease or before, actually, usually it's mild to early moderate, can use this tool to take their medication without having issues where they're going to over medicate. So, for example, let's say that you have a loved one that swears up and down they took their pill and yet you find their pills scattered all over the house. What you can do with this is you can load it up. It has 28 trays, so you can do up to 28 days, or you can do any increment thereof up to 28 days in the pill minder. They cannot open it because it requires two hands and it's rather complicated. It also comes with an app. So once they take the pills out, because there's an alarm that alerts them to take the pills, or you can record your voice to remind them to take the pill. Now, here's the caveat. If you're using your voice to remind them to take the pill, you need to change the message every 2 weeks, or you're going to start seeing them refusing to use it because they will get affronted and offended that you're reminding them to take the pill. So the other thing is, it does not circumvent if they pour the pills out. You get the text message saying that they've taken their pills, they get distracted and they put it on the counter. Does not help with that. Okay, so you want to definitely realize that there are problems, but for the most part, it will help your loved one stay on track. Now, My favorite tool is using the memory book because you're going to tell their story. I consider this one a threefer because you can get multiple uses out of this. First of all, you're going to gather photos of your loved one from the age of 5 up to their current age. You're going to set them up in chronological order, no more than 2 pictures on a page. You're going to also include everything from their story, their favorite pets, places they've worked, places they've worshiped, any place they volunteered or organizations they belong to, any schools that they went to, any significant events in their life in this book. Now, what you want to use it for first off is as a conversation starter. So when you have family members come over to visit and suddenly the conversation stops and your loved one is just staring but not responding, you can place this in their hand and open it up and show them a picture and ask them to tell you a story. More than likely, you might get a recovered memory or an epic work of fiction. Either way, enjoy that moment. Now, here's some things to keep in mind. You don't want to have more than 3 people in a photo. If you have more than 3 people, they will find it very confusing. Also, limit the sentences to 8 to 10 words because if you go longer than that, they will forget the beginning of the sentence before they get to the end. Now, here's a really important one, removable pages. Here's why. When they get to a certain point in the dementia, they go back in their timeline and they won't recognize themselves. So if they are looking at a picture and they're getting upset, remove that photo because it doesn't jive with what their brain is telling them is the truth. So you want to remove that page. You can slip something else in there. It could even be an art activity or something you did with the grandkids or the kids or whatever it is that you're doing. You can replace that page with something else. Now, here's the last little item. If your loved one learned English as a second language, they can lose that ability to speak English in as quickly as 2 weeks from either a fall or an illness. Sort of, somewhat, for example, say pneumonia. So something that affects their cognition and they can no longer speak. Now, here's the part where this will come in handy. When you create the first book, you're going to create a duplicate in their native tongue. That way, when they stop speaking with you, you can use it as a tool to figure out, okay, what's going on? And they'll give you physical signs. They might just stare at you. They might start weeping. They might refuse to look at you. If you put that book in their hand and have them look at it and they respond and they understand the language, then you know that you either need to speak to them in their native tongue or if you never learn